Initial testing on most samples sent to a cross-match lab includes a type and screen test to identify the presence of an atypical antibody. After setting up your testing, go to Antigen Plus and set up your worksheet. I'm using a 3-cell SurgiScreen panel which arrived from the supplier with an anagram profile. I had downloaded the data into Antigen Plus by going to the Utilities menu, selecting Import Data, Download from Internet, and when I'm sure the internet connection is on, I click Connect. I find the panel in the list, which is sorted by expiration date, and download it. Using the Options menu, I make sure that the antigen order is the same as the supplier's to make comparison easy. Then I select the lot number, and following laboratory protocol, print the lot number panel. Make sure that all of the data are exactly correct, and I have the signed document on hand. Under Options, I have also checked the Shade Ruled Out Antigens on Result Panel checkbox so that I get a visual check as I enter my results. As a further check, I like to turn on the search feature because it shows the count of the number of cells I have currently selected. So next, I go to the Utilities menu and add the lot to my selected cells. I see I have 3 selected cells. When you have your test results, drop the File menu and go to the Results panel. Enter your results in the appropriate column. In our case, we did an antiglobulin test, so we'll put the results in the indirect antiglobulin test column. Click in the open square, and the test results appear to the left. In this case, cells 1 and 3 were negative, but cell 2 was a clean 3+. As in most situations, at this point we did not run an autocontrol, so we'll leave that blank. With Antigen Plus, whenever you enter a negative result, you will immediately see ruled out antigens shaded and the evaluation below. It will evaluate according to the column type and will let you know that these are tentative rule-outs. The antigens listed after the test types are those that cannot be ruled out at this point. The number of times that any antigen has been excluded is tallied on the bottom line, except for sex-linked and P1, which need at least 3 rule-outs. We can see that big D, big C, and little c have each been excluded on 1 homozygous or double dose cell, and little e has been excluded on 2 homozygous cells. Our next step is to do a full panel to identify our problem antibody. Once you have pulled out your panel and set up your testing, you'll come back to Antigen Plus to bring your worksheet up to date and have it ready to enter your results when your testing is complete. From here, you would exit the results panel and select the lot number of the panel you're using. I was using an RA panel, so I select that, and under Utilities, add the lot to the selected cells. It was an 11-cell panel, and now we see 14 cells selected. Return to the results panel, and here's the worksheet, ready for me to add the panel test results. We're back, and to save time, I've already entered the test results. We had lots of negatives and a couple of strong reactions. Luckily enough, we have a preliminary evaluation which tells us we cannot exclude big E, which is of significant clinical importance. KPA and Lutheran A are low incidence antigens and highly unlikely to have been the problem. At this point in most cross-match labs, it would be considered safe to transfuse as long as the units were checked for the big E antigen. We can double-check the specificity by looking at the counts of how many times the clinically significant antigens have been excluded. You want to have at least 2 positives and 2 negatives. KPB, JSB, Duffy ANB, and JSA and JSB all satisfy the criterion, perfectly adequate to meet the statistical significance rule. If we wanted a little more detail, or a what-if scenario, in the case where we did not have such a clean-cut evaluation as an anti-Big E, we can return to the search screen and find cells which will allow us to exclude the low-incidence antibodies, assuming, of course, that we have the appropriate phenotypes in our database. Exit the results panel, and on the main page, our evaluation has been maintained below, so we know exactly which antigens we're looking for. Since we know that we have a Big E, we want to search cells that are negative for Big E. Then we go to our 2 lows in question and start by putting in zeros, because at least then you have the columns selected and are less likely to make a clerical error. Starting from left to right, my first one is the KPA, and I want a cell positive for KPA and negative for the other 2. I can see that I have some matches in my database, and I search for one. I find one in date, and I select it. Then I revert the KPA back to negative, and do the same for Lutheran. I see that there are some matches, I search for one, I select the cell. Each time I've selected a cell, I see that the cell count has gone up, so that I know I'm not having any duplicates in there. Now I'd like to find a Big E positive cell that is also little e positive. Since we may as well go for the weaker expression of Big E, just to make sure that it's still reactive. I search for one of those cells and select it, and now return to the results panel. The newly selected cells are at the bottom of the sheet. Using this worksheet, go and pull these particular cells out of the fridge, set them up for testing, and then come back and add your test results. And now, having used the search feature, we have complete evidence of anti-E. Our last task may be to save this panel in our database for future reference. Go to Utilities, Save Selected Panel, enter your patient's name, your case or ID number, and a description of your test, and save it. Now back on the main screen, in Utilities, I'm going to clear all the selected cells, turn off the search feature, and clear the screen. At any time in the future, I can go to Utilities, Load Selected Panel, and look up my panel by name, by number, or by date, select it, and load it. When I check my results panel, everything has reappeared as it was. I can use this for quality control, to check a technologist's work, for training, or for patient records.